In this presentation, we're going to look at plant identification characteristics. To identify all of our deciduous landscape plants, we're going to look at a lot of different characteristics, but they're fairly repetitive on each one. And so how are we going to sort these out? First, usually when we take a look at a plant, we'll look at the leaf type. And we covered simple and compound types in the previous presentation. So we'll take a look at leaf type first. Simple or compound. We have the once compound and the twice compound and the trifoliate. And so we take a look at those first. After we take a look at the leaf type, then we'll take a look at leaf arrangement. Leaf arrangement is actually on the stem, so it's how the leaves are arranged on the stem. You have basically two types. You have opposite and alternate. There's also a type called whorled, which we'll get into a little bit later, but we'll take a look at opposite and alternate first. On the opposite leaf arrangement, you have the leaves located opposite each other on the stem. It's at the leaf node, or at the node, the stem node, where this actually happens. Now on alternate, here's the stem, and then you have the leaves alternating down the stem. The internode distance is from here to here, and that's the point through on the stem where there are no buds, so the buds actually happen alternating, and then the leaves happen alternating down the stem. Opposite and alternate leaf arrangement can be quite helpful when you're trying to identify trees especially. With shrubs, about 50% have opposite leaf arrangement, about 50% have alternate leaf arrangement. With trees, we only have a few genus, and these are names of genus of trees right here, that actually have opposite leaf arrangement. You have Cornus, which are your dogwoods. You have Aesculus, which are your buckeyes. Fraxinus, which are the ash. And Acer, which we'll see quite a few of those. Those are all maples. Catalpa is actually our southern catalpa. And euonymus, euonymus is actually, most of the euonymus we will see are shrubs, but we do have one small tree that's a euonymus that has opposite leaf arrangement. So remember that leaf type and leaf arrangement are two very different things. Right here we have a simple leaf, opposite leaf arrangement, because they are arranged opposite on the stem. Here, this would be like a vitex, your chase tree, where you have the stem and then you have a palmately compound leaf with all these different leaflets, but the actual base of the leaf, where it comes from the stem, comes out of the bud, is opposite. It's arranged opposite on the stem. You can have also pinnately compound or trifoliate. An example of a trifoliate leaf would be your winter jasmine, where they're opposite, and then there are 3 leaflets. So the key is how these leaves, the complete leaves, are arranged on the stem. Same with alternate. You can have here simple leaves again, but they're alternating down the stem. So we have a leaf, then another leaf, alternating down the stem. And then on this next example, you have the stem, and then you have a pinnately compound leaf, and the leaf actually attaches right there, and then your next leaf would attach right there, and then further down the stem you would have another leaf attaching in an alternate manner there. So what about the shape of a leaf? Many times the shape of the leaf can be very helpful in identification, but most of the time it needs to be combined with some other factor. Like you may have an ovate or an oval-shaped leaf, and those would be combined with leaf arrangement. So you may have some that are an oval-shaped leaf that is opposite, or an oval-shaped leaf that's alternate. May also be combined with having teeth on the leaf. There's a very linear leaf on a desert willow that has along the actual leaf margin, which is along this area. It's very smooth. Then there is another linear leaf that is an actual true willow, and that has very fine serrations along the margin. It can be helpful in telling those two particular leaves apart. Same with we have some heart-shaped leaves in the eastern redbud. It's very smooth along the leaf margin, the leaf margin being along the edge, and a very kind of a similar leaf, heart-shaped, with the lindens that have teeth along the edge. So you kind of combine the shape with other characteristics of the plant. As I just mentioned in the previous image, the margin of the leaf is actually the edge of the blade or the edge of the leaflet. So it's along here. And so a smooth leaf margin is also called entire. So if it's smooth, many times you hear it called entire, meaning that there are no cuts in it. And so a serration on the leaf margin could be very fine teeth, or you could actually have a very, deeply serrated margin with very heavy teeth. You also sometimes have a little bit of a curl in the margin where if you look at it sort of sideways, you may see sort of a curling or a kind of a rippling along the leaf margin edge. Some leaves have cuts in them so deeply that they're basically called lobes. So it's actually different sections of a leaf. And that would be, in this area, that would be a lobe. So this leaf would have 5 lobes. And then each lobe has some sort of coarse teeth on it. So the space in between is actually called a sinus. So the space cut in between lobes is called a sinus. And then the big part is called a lobe. There are several plants, some of the oaks have these, some of the maples, most of the maples have sinuses and lobes. Many times when a plant has lobes, not all the time, but sometimes when they have lobes, you'll find where they have sort of an irregularity. So you may have, there's one in particular that's it's an oak that's kind of club-shaped. You may have kind of almost no lobes, or you may have some more kind of deeply cut lobes, like right here. This actually would represent a water oak. And then with irregular shapes, when we get to the white mulberry, you may find 3 or 4 different types of shapes on the same plant. And so that actually becomes an ID feature of that plant, that you can find so many irregular shapes on the same plant. Stems have a lot of different qualities, color, texture, whether or not they have lenticels, which are little gas-exchanging bumps or stripes on them. But one of the qualities of the stem is it a straight stem or a zigzag stem? Just as a couple of examples, the dogwood plant, the dogwood tree, has some of the most straight stems that you'll see in and it also has opposite leaf arrangements. So you've got this very straight stem, terminal bud, and the growth actually always going out sort of in that same direction. Other times we'll see some plants that have sort of a zigzag appearance, and it zigs and zags at each node. So you'll see a node with a bud or a leaf at the zigzag. And many times this is a plant that has not had a terminal bud, and so a lateral bud will take over the next season's growth. Not always, but we'll look at examples in lab of stems that have sort of a zigzag appearance and also stems that are very, very straight. Bark can be a really distinctive ID feature, or it could be one that doesn't tell you so much. We look at a few different qualities of bark. The texture of the bark, is it rough, is it furrowed, is it warty, is it peeling, the color of the bark, and also the age of the bark, or the age of the plant affects the bark. Many times in young plants, the bark on the trunk of trees, young trees, has not quite matured, and so the actual trunk, say of a tree that's 3 to 4 inches in diameter, may resemble just the branches of a tree of the same type that's older. So you kind of have to take into account the age of the plant. And as we go along in lab, we will see several examples of distinctive bark. The form of the plant, the form and the habit, is a very kind of large overall characteristic of the plant. Form usually is used to be sort of more general, like is it a tree or shrub or ground cover, and then habit is a little bit more in detail. So among trees, you may have trees with ascending branches. You may have trees with horizontal branches. You may have trees that are weeping. So, a tree, say, with ascending branches may kind of look like this, so that would be habit. A single trunk tree with horizontal branching, kind of like that in silhouette, and a tree with weeping branches, many times like in a weeping willow even, they look ascending at first, but then the branches sort of towards the end will weep downward. So it kind of has to go up and then go down, sort of like a fountain. You may also have these in shrubs. You may have sort of an arching shrub, that being the ground there, or even an upright shrub. So we'll take a look at each particular plant that we are introducing in the class, and take a look at the overall form and see how consistent that is, and see if it can help you with your plant identification. So you see, among all of these different plant identification characteristics, it's really almost an infinite variety by the time you mix and match in different characteristics on different plants. So you really need to use them kind of in concert. The leaf type, the leaf arrangement are both very dependable. Sometimes the form is very dependable. Sometimes the bark is dependable. Sometimes there are characteristics like leaf shape on a white mulberry that's not really all that dependable at all, but it's dependable within a range. So with each plant, we'll kind of learn the range for the characteristics and the amount of change that you may see from plant to plant. So you'll be able to take that into account as you're identifying this plant material.